Operation Wolf.
In 1987, Taito released Operation Wolf upon the world, just at a time when war movies set in steamy jungles were all the rage. You take control of Special Forces operative Roy Adams. The object of the game is to rescue the 5 hostages in the concentration camps throughout the 6 stages. Completion of each stage advances the story. For example, upon completing the jungle stage, an enemy leader is interrogated and the location of the enemy's concentration camp is found. This was one of the first shooter games to feature a storyline, believe it or not. The game utilizes an optical controller housed inside a gun assembly resembling the Uzi submachine gun. This in turn was mounted on top of a square base, converting the pivot shaft, which allowed players to swivel and elevate the gun. A geared motor inside the casing simulated recoil, which was felt by the player when they fired the weapon at in-game targets.
Sustained a lethal injury. Sorry, but you are finished. Here.
Not a bad attempt at bringing Operation Wolf to the C64. Some good tunes throughout, as well as keeping a lot of the arcade presentation. It's just a shame it's actually too difficult and tricky to shoot with much accuracy. I remember back in the day, all the ZX Spectrum magazines raving on about how great the port of Operation Wolf was on the system. Well, it is certainly fast and furious, but overly so. It's impossible to take out everything, plus you don't get anywhere near enough bombs to take out vehicles, nor are there any to pick up in time. This is such a shame, because the actual core game is really well done. Great speed, accurate aiming, and fun. Well, that's until you suddenly realise you have no way of blowing up the tanks and helicopters. Well, what would you know? The CPC version is just as fast as the ZX Spectrum version, but in full colour. It even adds a little extra arcade presentation when it comes to selecting your mission. Sadly, it also suffers from the same problems in that it's too hectic, making it extremely tough to take out all the enemies, while not sustaining an exuberant amount of damage. This is most likely the version of Operation Wolf most people, especially those in the States, have played. It's a shame too, as it isn't really very good. For a start, the graphics kind of look pathetic compared to even the ZX Spectrum port. Then we have the SNES Zapper. It's not exactly accurate when playing this game, which certainly doesn't help. But on the plus side, at least this can be played with a light gun. The Master System port wipes the floor with the NES version in terms of looks and playability. The sound on the other hand isn't too hot, but then again neither was the NES version. And the ports just keep getting better and better with the PC Engine release. This has the most balanced gameplay out of all the ports featured so far, much closer to the arcade original. It also features some wicked classic arcade sound effects. As you can see, the Amiga port does well on the presentation front, with a lot of the arcade speech being present. Unfortunately, as you can also see, it runs at about 10 frames per second. Now, this, while off-putting, isn't too bad, since the sprites are large and the animation fairly well done, in most cases. However, the low frame rate messes with the playability. Sometimes your bomb will appear in a completely different area to where you fired it. Also, in many cases, you could be shooting the crap out of something, yet it will just not die. Most likely because your hits are not being detected because of the dropped frames. No surprise that the Atari ST version runs faster than the Amiga version, but that doesn't make it the better game. This port suffers from slowdown when things get busy, which then brings in the accuracy issue that plagues the Amiga port. This alone isn't enough to make the ST version inferior to the Amiga, but once you add the weaker audio, poorer arcade presentation and multiple disc swapping, it soon becomes the poorer of the two. There are two ports of Operation Wolf for the MSX. The first and so-called official release by Ocean was the typical crap they released on the MSX. Yes, you guessed it. Just another very poor, specky port. So in 2006 a new version was developed by Toybox and released on cartridge. This version is vastly superior to the Ocean release, featuring full color graphics, fast gameplay and good audio. There's also a version for the Colecovision which looks pretty much identical to this MSX version. Looking very nice indeed, this MS-DOS port could be considered to be one of the best made. It's much smoother than the likes of the Amiga and ST versions, plus features just as much, if not more, animation. It even plays really well. In fact, the only downside is the audio. It may support sound cards, however, I couldn't get any of them to work, so we're left with the nasty PC speaker audio. And let's take a look at all those versions of Operation Wolf running side by side.